What is up, guys? Lord Nick here, bringing you another One Piece related video. This video, guys, we're going over my Op10 list for Rebecca. We have quite a few updates, quite a few changes. I am constantly modifying this deck. This is more of a jumping off point and kind of giving you an idea of what I'm looking at to maybe give you the ideas of what you should be trying to look at as well. We are not going to be doing gameplay. I'm probably going to be reducing the number of videos as well that I'll be making here. Well, I've already done that, but I'll be reducing it to the point of just doing maybe one every couple of weeks. I'm just not really feeling the game anymore. I've kind of burnt out on when I was playing it 3 locals a week, and then I came to San Antonio. I started playing a little bit here, and then I've just gotten to so many other card games to hang out with other friends and stuff like that, and so it's kind of just moved me away from the itch to be super competitive in a card game, or trying to be super competitive with a bad deck in a card game. Because I've coped. This has been my cope deck for a long time. If you followed the channel, I've gotten decently good at this deck, and I have enjoyed playing it a lot. I would hardly call it a super competitive deck anymore, but this is probably the closest it's been in actual review of it. This is the meta where this deck could thrive, right? We just had 2 of its worst matchups just neutered super hard each, and we got so much good support from the set. So let's kind of jump into it and discuss where we're at. So if you notice, there is a ton of 2-ofs in this deck, right? We have a lot of 2-ofs, and a big part of that is that we have a lot of searching power. As majority of this deck, there are 4 non-Dressrosa cards in this deck, so our searcher hits everything and our leader ability hits everything, so we can keep going card deep. On top of that, we have a lot of mill power between Orlumbuses, Zoros, Heroes, even the Sabos and the Cavendishes. These are each getting us through cards as well as our searcher, so we are going to go through our deck really fast, which then means that we don't need as much, copies of every card, because we're going to be going through the deck as more. If we had a more unified win condition that we wanted to play to every single game, that we think could win every single game, I would probably, go up on the counts on Aramaki, Kuzan if I really felt like that we had to hit those in every single matchup. I feel like there are actually quite a few matchups now where those aren't as necessity, but just to these are more just kind of safety notes to have for the matchups that we need them in, right? In Blackbeard, we definitely need the Aramakis. The Kuzan help a ton. But, in something like, I don't know, any type of aggro deck, well, we have enough good bodies in the early game and removal pieces to be able to go face-to-face with aggro now. We have a lot more options of how we can play this out, though I will generally be playing this more like a fatigue build still, just because they are still in the deck, and it's the strategy that I've played for a very long time. Possibly part of the reason I've burnt out is just playing this long grindy matchup, but I've enjoyed it still nonetheless, and this is kind of the meta for me to be testing it out. So we are testing out a lot of cards, a lot of different slot ins here or there. We do run a lot of 3-ofs as well. But let's kind of get to it. So Aramaki and Kuzan have been dropped to 2-ofs, and a big part of that is the fact that we have the access to Cavendish. Cavendish allows us to cycle a lot more than just the Sabo did, because if this stays on the board for more than 1 turn, every single swing that this does just gives us a better chance of finding these 2 cards that we need to find. Which can spell a lot of more consistency aspects to the deck. I was debating running them more, but I felt like there was still a need to have at least 1 Sabo in here to have protection on the deck, and then the new Sabo is a great 2K option to also have protection. We are still running a Scarlet package, though I've reduced her by 1, even though we have 6 copies of cards that I really want her to put out, and then a couple other cards that she can. She's just more or less there to help Franky have even more options of cards that he can pick, which Franky has been very nice to feel, and as a 2-of, I think he's actually the perfect number. I see him relatively often enough. It's perfectly fine. Our total 2K count, also for those just curious here, we are currently at 11 2Ks. I think that is a abundance of 2Ks that we may not need, but the Sabo is more or less there just to be a onboard protection of pretty much every character that we have until we get to our top end. He also makes it significantly harder for any deck to be able to deal with this Luffy. It just protects us into a lot of matchups that we need to be ready for in case there are some that start showing back up. let's see, where are we at? So 2 of Cavendish to replace 1 copy of Armaki, 1 Kuzan. We've already talked Sabos and Scarlets. Orlumbus is our main engine for reduction, kind of a standard one. We have a lot of cards that synergize with them, so we might as well run them. On top of that, with the abundance of mill that this deck now has, we will be going through our deck so fast that his downside is not necessarily a downside. This is much more of a turbo self-mill kind of Rebecca build that also has draw options that are way better. So like she's just becoming way more consistent, and so I think this is kind of the main engine that the deck should be running nowadays. Giats, just to give our Cavendish the option to come in on turn that he comes out. Same thing kind of with the Zoros. He's just got a lot more value because we have a lot more valuable targets between those two and even the Luffy to start threatening board space a lot more. 3 of Kyros, I was going to be dropping this card completely, but with the Orlumbus engine, he's very, very nice, and having some early spot removal with a lot of Zero type of builds trying to come back into the meta, we now have an option of a card to help synergize and clear, especially if we go into like an early Scarlet on turn 1, follow it up with a Zoro to pop one of their characters, and then the Scarlet to bring out a Kyros to pop another one of their characters. We can clear 2 characters, setting up 2 very menacing bodies on our own board, and we don't need to use stage for that. So actually a very valuable piece to have in the engine, and thus I have added him back into the list at a 3 of. Sabo is a 1 of. He's a recurable piece between Rebecca and Moncherie. We can get him back pretty easily, so I don't think we need that many copies of him. He's more or less just there to give us an option in our trash that we can get back to then protect our board if we need to. Specifically, like the protect from pops on the Moncherie, like the Moncherie Rebecca Sabo late game combo is just super, super strong. Suleiman, really great secondary engine for reduction. -2 is very, very valuable for a lot of our cards. 3 is a decent number right now because of like Tashigi's and the green-red smoker. On top of that, 6s has always been a valuable number to hit, and him plus Zoro hits that 6. So it becomes a very valuable number for us to hit. On top of that, he can then move our Aramakis up to 4 if we don't have a Kuzan. So very useful tool, very nice tool, and he synergizes both with Franky and Scarlet. Bardo is our main recurable 2K. We still want 3 copies of him, but I don't think 4 is a necessity anymore because we have so many other 2K options. Main Searcher, easy option. The main 2K of the deck because 1, it is a 2K, 2, it is another reduction piece. It synergizes with Scarlet, synergizes with Franky. It just is a good reduction piece. Thus, I think we are in a very good spot because of this card. We're in a very good spot to run 4 of this card just because there's almost no downside to it whatsoever. And it's an activate main, so it gets around Blackbeard. Super useful. Moncherie, a big part of our recursion engine. I've gone over it in the past, but it gets back. It puts cards back into our deck so we don't mill out. On top of that, it returns a 3 to 5 cost black character back to our hand. So this can get us back our Rebeccas. Our Rebeccas can get us back something else, and so on and so forth, and we get a lot more recursion and easy value. Rebecca, the obvious recursion piece of the deck, and a 4-drop blocker. So, you know, awesome value out of this card. Card is the most broken card in our deck. It's probably the best black card in the game that's not banned currently, so it should be run in pretty much every list that can. Franky is a really solid 2 of to give us even more recursion. This deck is, as you can tell, I've used that word a lot. This deck is becoming a very big recursion-focused controlled deck, and this build very much focuses on giving us good options for Franky to hit. Franky can be utilized in multiple different ways. He can set us up with a body for our following turn with Kyros, who could also pop like 1-drop searchers out of green decks, which is really, really nice. Or he could set us up with a search of our own. He could set us up with reduction that we might need the next turn, give us another recursion piece, all this while blocking on our opponent's turn. Meanwhile, on our own turn, if he survives their turn, we can swing with him, get value out of that, have our Orlumbus that's already on board, KO him, and get back our Kyros, which can then pop a 5, or we can have him get back a Suleiman to reduce something by 6, and then drop a Zoro and just pop off anything. So we have so many different plays that Franky gives, that enables us and gives us, that we just normally would not have, and I value that a ton. He is also a card that we can grab back with Rebecca while we deploy something else and then play the Franky, right? Like on an 8-dawn turn, let's say we have an Orlumbus, right? We can use Rebecca, grab Franky, deploy, say, Suleiman. Suleiman minus his 2. Play the Franky. Franky gets KO'd by our Orlumbus. Orlumbus then minus 4s that same target, and we can get back Akiros to pop a 7. Right? There's so many combo lines that Franky enables that he's just a very, very solid 2 of. But like Scarlet, he is an enabler to the combo line. He is not like the linchpin of having to be at a 4 of the deck. He's not the like main thing that starts it. He's not a combo starter. He's a combo enabler. So he's like for Yu-Gi-Oh turns, he extends it, right? He extends your plays. So having him as a 2 of and Scarlet as a 2 of, we kind of want those equal matchup of extensions. And then the main removal of the deck, Zoro, the Piece de Resistance. This card is insane. This card is the best Dressrosa card that we have access to probably at this point. Like, he is rivaling Rebecca in just strength, and the fact that he is just on curve, aggressively statted, and pops a 4 cost. This card is just super, super good. It's the main reason that Rebecca has a shot in this meta. If we did not get Zoro, the rest of these pieces are really nice, but it does really require a lot of setup, a lot of work. Zoro gets to skip that by just being base 4 reduction, 4 cost removal, which is super, super good. Last piece that has helped this deck be able to be a bit grindier and stay in this kind of build path is going to be our Luffys. Our 6-drop Luffys are very, very valuable over the 7-drops, and the big reasons is the style of play change. 7-drop Luffy really was a good, great piece for his own build. He was your top end. He was your win condition. You were playing 2 7-drop Luffys. Meanwhile, I don't do that with 6. 6-drop Luffy is a great piece that is fitting into the archetype that allows for us to get incremental advantages where we would normally just have to wait out and give our opponent time. So here we are putting pressure on our opponent. As I've already kind of alluded to, Gyatz gives 6-drop Luffy at the same cost of his old Luffy to be able to attack into an active character. Instead of being able to do it multiple times and for sure remove a character, we are threatening their hand and making it harder for them to protect that character the first time. Right? We are forcing them to have to remove a card from their hand, so it could screw up their next turn if they really wanted to give up the next turn to protect this character, or they screw up their ability to protect this character in some ways, right? So we will take a card out of their hand. We get to put some cards back into our deck to stop us from fatiguing ourselves out, or from milling ourselves out, and we are threatening their character, and instead of costing a 5k protection 2 cards, it costs them 3 cards now to protect a 5k body, so it's more likely to remove a 5k body. If it's trying to go even with like say a 7k body, it costs them 2 cards now, which is not necessarily where they want to be to protect that body. On top of that, he becomes very difficult for them to remove. They're relying on removals, right? 6-drop is not necessarily that far out of the range of most removal decks to get rid of. Neither is a 7k body, but he prevents himself from being KO'd the first time you would attempt to KO him with an effect each turn. So once he is rested, he's a bit more susceptible, but he is still very hard to deal with. Very annoying body, and even if he does get removed, right, like say they use a removal tool on him and then follow it up with a second removal tool, he's eaten 2 removal tools, or they have to use generally a lot of Dawn investment to kill him. And oftentimes, if I don't have that much counter in my hand, I'm okay with it as long as I have a Rebecca, because then on a 10 Dawn turn, I can Rebecca, get back the Luffy, play the Luffy, and now the Luffy's threatening their board state again and their hand again, right? So he is a very valuable tool. He is also a very nice tool to have to go at their life earlier because of decks like Bonnie, for instance, where I don't necessarily want to turn my cards sideways because that always offers them the option to either Dofi them or to use Shanks to KO them. Well, this card can't be KO'd by just a Shanks, and if they're using 9 Dawn to try to do that, well, it doesn't do anything. So the other option is now that with this card on board, if I have him plus a Kuzan, all I have to do is use Mon Cherie to start getting back Sabos, and my board state is super protected. Yes, he can't break out of the Dofi lock. Yes, the Dofi lock is still annoying, but we have so many card options to get us out of killing the Dofi, so even if it just takes us a couple turns to get out of it, the only thing coming at us usually is going to be a 5k leader swing, which really isn't that big of a deal for us, and so we can just kind of sit there and be okay with it. So yeah, the deck has a lot more synergies to itself. It has a lot more extensions to its combos, and it has a lot more ways of making those combos a meaningful one, opposed to having to find the exact same combo, because we have so many different avenues to approach them now. The deck has gotten a lot more consistent, a lot easier. It's in my mind, it's both easier and harder to play. It's easier in the fact that there's a lot more. It's a lot more forgiving now in the fact that there are so many other combos to bail you out if you fuck up one combo. But it's less forgiving because now you have to know so many. It's more difficult because now you have to know so many more lines that you have to be able to play. Ultimately, this deck is really cool, really fun. I'm hoping that it revitalizes my urge to play this game, but in some ways I'm also hoping it doesn't, because I'm in so many different card games now that I'm running out of money in a hasty way. So you know, here's hoping it goes well. I'll let you guys know probably with a post in the Discord about tonight's locals. So, but until next time, guys, I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye, guys.